Since the beginning of this day, 113 combat clashes have been recorded at the front. This was reported by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The most intense situation is in the Kostiantynivka, Pokrovsk, and Oleksandrivka directions. More details about the situation on the front line are coming up next.
Ukrainian assault units have advanced in certain areas of the Donetsk region. This concerns the Pokrovsk area, according to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. Over the past day, Ukrainian forces conducted a sweep over an area of more than 3 square kilometers, destroying enemy resources and reconnaissance groups. As part of the Dobropilya operation, since the beginning of its active phase, the armed forces of Ukraine have liberated more than 180 square kilometers. More than 220 square kilometers have been cleared of saboteurs. Despite attempts by Russian forces to counterattack, Ukrainian defenders continue to maintain the initiative in several directions. Despite unsuccessful attempts by the Russians to advance in certain areas, over the past day our soldiers conducted search and destroy operations against the enemy over an area of 3.4 square kilometers in the Pokrovsk district of Donetsk region. Assault units in certain directions advanced up to 1.6 kilometers. Thank you to all Ukrainian defenders who are destroying the enemy. I especially want to acknowledge the defenders from the 33rd Separate Assault Regiment and the 253rd Battalion. Alexander Syrsky, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Facebook. In the Donetsk region, the Russian army made another attempt at a mechanized assault. This time in the Kostiantynivka direction, the enemy, just as they did the day before near Dobropilya, threw heavy armored vehicles and tanks into battle. However, thanks to the coordinated efforts of the pilots from the border unit Phoenix and adjacent units, the assault was not only stopped but also resulted in the destruction of 17 pieces of Russian equipment, including APCs and tanks. Around 50 Russian occupiers were also killed or wounded. And in the Konstantinovka direction, Russian invaders assaulted the defense forces' positions towards Konstantinovka and near Sherbinovka, Pleshcheyevka, Rusin-Yar and Poltavka. In the Pokrovsk direction, the enemy carried out attacks in the areas of Vladimirovka, Novishakov, Nikanorovka, Krasny Liman, Mikhailovka, Novoekonomikeskoye, Pokrovsk, Zverev, Kotlino and Udaknoye. In the Alexandrovsk direction, the Russian army tried to advance near Sichnevoye, Sosnovka, Novonikolaevka and Poltavka.
The enemy is in a hurry, quite possibly counting on the next week or two, while the ground is still relatively stable, and accordingly, our dirt roads have not yet turned into a complete quagmire as a result of the autumn rains. Quite likely. Nevertheless, the fact remains that the enemy still has the resources to carry out large-scale offensive actions on various sections of the front. In turn, the Ukrainian army is demonstrating resilience. I believe this resilience is due not only to the courage and heroism of our soldiers, but also to those very engineering fortifications that were built in a timely manner at the most threatened sections of the front.
And the Alter Ego unit of the 93rd Brigade Kolodny Yar has demonstrated how it uses combat ground robotic systems to counter the Russian occupiers entrenched in the forest belts near Kostiantynivka. Ground drones equipped with machine guns open fire at close range, which allows them to effectively hit targets without putting Ukrainian infantrymen at risk. In the Russian army, realizing the real threat posed by these ground robotic systems, they try to hunt them down using FPV drones and artillery. However, despite this, Alter Ego continues to successfully carry out operations using remotely controlled machine guns. Over the past day, Ukraine's defense forces have eliminated 1,200 Russian servicemen. According to the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the total losses of the Russian army since the start of the full-scale aggression have exceeded 1,125,000 people. In addition, over the past day, 5 Russian tanks, 29 artillery systems, and 145 units of enemy automotive equipment were destroyed.
US President Donald Trump named Turkish leader Recep Erdogan as a possible mediator in resolving Russia's war against Ukraine. He made this statement after his visit to the Middle East. According to Trump, the Kremlin dictator Putin respects Erdogan, and Trump himself considers Erdogan his friend and believes that he can help bring about peace.
Erdogan can do it. He is respected by Russia. I can't speak for Ukraine, but he is respected by Putin and is my friend. You know, do you understand why I get along with strong people? I don't get along with the weak, I get along with the strong. I don't know why that is, but Erdogan treats me very well. You know, when NATO has problems with Erdogan, and that happens often, they call me to talk to him. I never let them down. I always sorted everything out right away, right?
US Ambassador to NATO Matthew Whitaker stated that the possible supply of Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, as well as blocking Russia's shadow fleet, could push the Russian dictator Putin toward peace negotiations. His words were reported by the Italian publication La Repubblica. Whitaker believes that the possibility of striking deep into Russia with Tomahawk missiles, as well as many other factors, could change Putin's calculations regarding the war in Ukraine. He also noted that for now the Russians are not ready to abandon their maximalist goals, but everything could change. The European Union supports the idea of supplying American Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. This was stated today at a briefing in Brussels by the EU spokesperson for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Anita Hipper. According to her, Ukraine has every right to self-defense, which is why the EU welcomes support for Kyiv's military needs. And the chief spokesperson of the European Commission, Paula Pinho, said that the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, is in constant contact with Volodymyr Zelensky.
I have no information as to whether von der Leyen has been in contact with Zelensky regarding his visit to the United States, but they are certainly in regular contact. As for whether President Trump will take a more active role in the peace settlement, that is a question for President Trump. We are addressing this issue both at the level of Ursula von der Leyen herself and at the level of other leaders, and we are doing everything possible to also communicate our position on the war and to ensure President Trump's cooperation.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen emphasized the necessity of supporting Ukraine as a key element of the continent's security. She stated this in a video address to participants of the 5th European Conference on Defense and Security in Brussels. According to the official, the war in Ukraine demonstrates the harsh reality of why Europe's preparedness for defense is critically important. Von der Leyen reminded that this week she will present to the European Council a roadmap for achieving full EU defense readiness by 2030. The plan includes accelerating the production of defense products, strengthening Europe's industrial base, and promoting investment in Ukraine's defense industry.
Putin's brutal invasion of Ukraine has been ongoing for a 4th year now, and we know that he is a predator, someone who can only be stopped by strong deterrence. That is why it is crucial that, when it comes to our own defense, we are coordinated, precise and swift. Ukraine must remain strong so that our region can also remain strong.
Russia may attack NATO countries much sooner than Europe predicts. This is the opinion of analysts at the Institute for the Study of War. As the Kremlin ramps up its sabotage and reconnaissance missions, Europe is increasingly recording both covert and direct attacks by Russian special services. We cannot relax, assuming that a possible Russian attack won't happen before 2029, warned Martin Jaeger, head of Germany's Federal Intelligence Service. Europe is already under threat, he stated. My colleague Nikita Skoblikov will continue on this topic.
Germany will support Romania and Bulgaria in their confrontation with Russia, declared Johann Wadefull, head of the German Foreign Ministry, ahead of his 2-day visit to these countries. Bulgaria demonstrates just how closely security and integration are linked. The upcoming accession to the Eurozone sends a powerful signal of stability both for Sofia and for all of Europe. Romania is directly experiencing Russian aggression. Russian drones have violated its airspace. Such encroachments on the sovereignty of a NATO partner country are unacceptable. Johann Wadefull, German Foreign Minister, from a statement on the website of the German Foreign Ministry. Analysts warn Russian hybrid operations are not a series of isolated attacks, but a long-term strategy by Moscow. But whereas previously Russian intelligence agencies preferred cyber-sabotage, espionage and subversion, they have now moved to direct escalation, violating the airspace of European states.
Basically, from the very beginning, he insisted that Russia must be a superpower, and if someone stands in the way of that, he makes sure to achieve it. So, when he suddenly feels that now is the time to resolve this not only against Ukraine by military means, but also against other countries, that's something we can't predict. That could actually happen quite soon, yes.
The possibility of a direct Russian attack on NATO countries is also being discussed by Germany's Federal Intelligence Service. Its head, Martin Jaeger, commented to Bloomberg that the Kremlin is seeking to undermine the unity of the North Atlantic Alliance and destabilize European democracies. And while previously European intelligence agencies claimed that the bloc had time to prepare until 2029, now the discussion is that a strike could come much sooner.
The hybrid methods that Russia uses to achieve this goal have become a widespread phenomenon. The frequency of such incidents represents a new level of confrontation, a standoff in which Russia views us as an adversary and, in fact, as a warring party. Despite attempts to conceal its true intentions, Moscow is in reality seeking to test the strength of our borders. At best, Europe will remain in a state of cold peace, which at any moment could escalate into open confrontation. We must be prepared for further escalation of the situation. Martin Jaeger, head of Germany's Federal Intelligence Service, in a comment to Bloomberg.
Martin Jaeger was previously the ambassador to Ukraine right up until this summer, yes. And before that, he worked on issues related to Iraq and even Afghanistan. So he really does have a deep understanding of security matters. It's a good thing that someone like him is in that position now. This may also be part of our new focus, so to speak, that someone like him was appointed to this post.
Russia continues its hybrid aggression against NATO countries. The Polish prosecutor's office has charged a Russian couple with espionage for the FSB and with preparing to send a bomb. They were arrested in the summer of 2024. According to the investigation, they planned to send a package via courier containing explosives, a modified portable charger, and a thermos with a shaped charge. The bomb was intercepted at a courier company warehouse in the Łódź voivodeship. The prosecutor's office emphasizes that the case is international in nature and is connected to the activities of a Russian spy network in EU countries. The trial of the accused will take place in the coming weeks in Warsaw.
The investigation also established that Igor R., from February to August 2022, cooperated with the Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation regarding the Republic of Poland, including by collecting and transmitting information about Russian opposition members living in Poland, as well as about individuals and organizations assisting them. He transmitted this information to his wife, Irina R., on an encrypted electronic device for further transfer to the FSB on the territory of the Russian Federation. From a publication on the website of the National Prosecutor's Office of Poland.
To conceal the financial traces of sabotage, the Kremlin is increasingly paying its agents in cryptocurrency. According to Sławomir Sienkiewicz, head of Poland's National Security Bureau, Moscow likely used this very payment method to finance most of its attacks. Nikita Skoblikov for Freedom TV channel.
Russia is experiencing a personnel shortage. Despite the growing number of unemployed people, the shortage of qualified personnel is only getting worse. This was reported by the Foreign Intelligence Service of Ukraine. In August, the number of officially unemployed people in St. Petersburg reached almost 17,000, of which nearly 10,000 were jobless. Companies are looking for specialists in new technological fields such as cybersecurity, data analytics, and engineering, since the market is dominated by candidates from traditional industries. This clearly demonstrates the degradation of the country's labor potential, stated Ukrainian intelligence. In addition, companies in Russia are switching to cost-saving mode, meaning they are optimizing staff and increasing workloads for employees without raising salaries. Some businesses are even cutting their workforce altogether. Against this backdrop, there is simply a shortage of people in the fields of industry, transportation, education, and construction. Ukrainian drones are striking the Russian oil industry. This is having a noticeable impact on processing. The International Energy Agency stated that the consequences of the strikes on refineries will hold back the industry at least until the middle of next year. Since the beginning of August, nearly 30 plants have been attacked. As a result, there are gasoline shortages in several regions of Russia. Moscow has already restricted fuel exports until the end of the year, and according to experts, processing has dropped to 500,000 barrels per day, and the recovery of the industry is being postponed by at least a year and a half. After the Ukrainian Defense Forces struck the oil depot in Feodosia, the Russians will try to supply fuel to the temporarily occupied Crimea via 3 routes. This was stated by the spokesperson of the naval forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Dmytro Pletenchuk. According to him, the Russian occupiers may use the Kerch Bridge, the railway between Rostov and Jankoy, as well as ferry crossings.
We are observing a fuel shortage for civilian consumers. It is possible that this will also affect the military. But yes, they do have several alternatives for theoretically replenishing supplies in the temporarily occupied territory of Crimea. The air route, of course, is not being considered for this purpose. But in any case, these volumes are not sufficient to fully compensate for the losses the enemy has suffered in Crimea. Dmytro Pletenchuk, spokesperson for the Ukrainian Navy, speaking live on the United News Marathon.
Polish Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski displayed a Shahed drone in the British Parliament building, the same type used by Russians in attempts to strike Ukraine. Sikorski himself wrote about this on the social network X. He clarified that an entire fleet of such scrap metal is capable of destroying a country's critical infrastructure. He added that the Russian army uses these drones to terrorize Ukrainians, and with decoy drones has even violated Polish airspace. The head of the Polish Foreign Ministry emphasized, Putin will only lose the war against Ukraine when he admits that starting it was a mistake.
Ukrainians are prepared for the war to last another 3 years, and that is reasonable. We need to convince Putin that we are ready to stay the course for at least these 3 years, that Ukraine will not be abandoned, and that it will have the resources to maintain its own statehood, army and defense industry. And then Russia can be forced to change its course. The claim that Russia always wins is not true.
3 residents of Kherson were killed as a result of a Russian attack. The Russian army shelled the Dnipro and Korabelny districts of the city with artillery. The strikes have continued for the second day in a row and are happening at roughly the same time. It is also known that 6 people were injured, including a 1.5-month-old baby. For more details on the consequences of the Russian shelling of Kherson, watch the report.
Kherson resident Anna tearfully talks about her neighbor who was killed. Yesterday, the elderly woman's house was damaged as a result of yet another Russian attack. And today's strike by the Russian occupiers took her life.
She had just buried her husband.
She buried her husband, and now we're trying to somehow get in touch with her children. But what are we supposed to tell them? That their mother is gone?
She was a teacher at my child's kindergarten. A very good woman, open-hearted. It's all very sad. Her name was Jana. I don't remember her patronymic, honestly. Well, we were on a first-name basis. She's a very good, bright person. Everything that's happening in our city is just terrible.
For the second day in a row, the Russian army has been shelling this district of Kherson with artillery at about the same time, around noon. Anna's home was also damaged in the attack. She and her family were just cleaning up after yesterday's shelling when the house was hit again.
For the second day in a row. It was terrifying. We hid in the house, covering ourselves with our hands. Yesterday it hit, half the house was destroyed. We started cleaning it up, and it hit again.
The blast wave was so strong that a parked car was thrown against the wall of the building. After the Russian attack, huge holes gape in many houses. In some places, nothing is left of the walls at all. Most homes have been damaged again.
Where do we even start? Tell me how. There are no doors left at all. How are we supposed to live?
As a result of the shelling in the Dnipro district of Kherson, 2 people were killed and 6 more were injured. Among them was a 1.5-month-old baby. One of the injured is in serious condition in the hospital. The Russian army also attacked the Korabelny district of the city again. There, as a result of the shelling, an 88-year-old local resident was killed. Ksenia Sitinskaya, Natalia Nedostup from Kherson for Freedom TV channel.
German Foreign Minister Joachim Wadiful called on Donald Trump to increase pressure on Putin to end the war in Ukraine. The head of the German Foreign Ministry noted Trump's contribution to resolving the conflict in Gaza. Berlin believes that now is the right time to launch a peace process in Ukraine and warns of the risk of escalation of hostilities.